The story that closes out the Psychos section of Dancing with Tombstones is a tale called The Matriarch. And it's about a Native American 7-foot tall serial killer. And he's got a body cut up in the trunk, and he's caught out on 495 in a rainstorm with 2 flat tires. And at the end of this short story, he's being approached by a policeman who thinks he's going to help this poor guy with 2 flats, in the middle of the rainstorm. And I remember I sent it to S.T. Joshi actually in 2013 for his Searchers After Horror anthology, where I wrote The Girl Between the Slats that ended up in that book. And he didn't turn down The Matriarch. He just said he didn't have a vehicle for it, and he suggested that I write a novel based on The Matriarch. And I did. It came out in 2016. It was my 3rd novel, called Phantom Effect. And the first section, or the first pre-chapter, is the short story The Matriarch. And I thought it was important to include that in Dancing with Tombstones as its own kind of artistic piece. The thing about Phantom Effect and The Matriarch is there were a lot of editors back then, mostly for magazines that I was, submitting to, that had a bunch of weird, trendy limitations they were putting on writers, and I wasn't happy about that. There was a lot of first person, it takes sloppy seconds to third person limited. So don't write anything in first person. It makes you a weak writer. Or flashbacks are bad. Or point of view shifts are no good. And I just thought that was bullshit. So Phantom Effect was really, and that was put out by Nightshade Skyhorse as well. That was my rebellion, because I used The Matriarch and things like it in first person as pre-chapters, and then I did third person limited for the chapters themselves. I did multiple points of view. Not only did I have flashbacks, but I made a fucking funhouse of flashbacks. It was an integral part of the story. So I'll always look on The Matriarch as being the spark for the rebellion. The story that kicks off the section Tools and Tech in the Dancing with Tombstones collection is my only science fiction story. I've never written one before, never written one since. And I'm not a science guy, not a math guy, but an idea came to me, and it started with the idea that we're always getting smaller. It started out, if you wanted to see Rocky or Jaws or a movie in the 70s, you're on the big screen, and that's the only place you can get it. Then we had VHS, and we could put it on the TV. And then, now we have cell phones. And I connected that idea with the fact that everybody's always looking for a charger. So what if we had a screen that we could power with human neurons, and maybe have an ocular device so we could read it? So we get surgically implanted screens in our thumbs, and we call it the thumb screen. And I connected that with the idea that perhaps the next thing with social media is exchanging PIN numbers and being able to read the other person's mind for 5 minutes. And I just took that idea and went with it, and boy, was it fun. Of course, I have to bring the tool business into my stories, which I'm actually glad now that I sold power tools for 11 years, 10 or 11 years, because it introduced me to a different kind of person than I normally would be in contact with, purely in academia. And this one, called The Gravekeeper, is very short. My technical experiment was doing pure dialogue with no speaker attributions and no narrative summary in between, no beats. All it is dialogue. And, you know, it's your basic horror story about a gravekeeper who's sitting in his truck at midnight with a professor. So I could put those two personalities up against each other. And they're waiting to see who keeps digging up the caskets. And the story was just a lot of fun. The third story in the tools and tech section of Dancing with Tombstones is called The Tool Shed. And I wrote this one specifically for Jason Henderson. He did the Van Helsing movies and the Young Captain Nemo. I've been on his podcast before, the Castle of Horror podcast, and he has started a small press called Castle Bridge Productions. And he puts out anthologies that are themed. And I wrote this one for him, and it's about a haunted tool shed. And I would say just looking at the words and the poetic sense that it has, like the atmosphere, is one of the ones that I am most drawn to. And I look forward to hearing what people say about this one.